like to call the Charter Review Commission meeting of Thursday, May 14th to order. Roll call.
Balmer.
Here.
Craig.
Here.
Deeth.
Here.
Denning. DeRue.
Here.
Hayek.
Here.
Kuchera.
Here.
Maliabo. Patel.
Here.
Item number 2 on the agenda is to adopt the draft minutes as presented or amended. Has everyone had an opportunity to read the minutes, the draft minutes? Anybody wish to
Move approval?
move by Deeth, seconded by Kuchera? Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item number 3, review of draft proposals for preamble and Article 1, powers of the city. I want to thank our city attorney for providing us some language to consider.
Certainly. Did you want me to speak further about it?
Yes,
or-
let's do.
Okay.
Let's have an opportunity to visit
Sure.
about it.
Well, so hopefully you've all received a copy of my memo dated May 9th, in which I, at your request, did some tweaking and drafting of a couple of the provisions that had previously been discussed by your commission at the last meeting. First, as it related to preamble section 1A, we wanted to revise it so as to just be careful about kind of guaranteeing more than we really could. I think the example I used last time is that, we do discriminate. It's illegal discrimination that's, of course, improper. We don't hire blind bus drivers is, the one I think I used. Last time, we also discriminate based on age. We don't let people in bars past 10 o'clock. Unless they're 21. So we do some of that, and so we just wanted to not be overbroad. And so that's why I drafted what I did, which just says that each individual shall have the opportunity to participate in the economic, cultural, and intellectual life of the city. Maybe I'll pause for a moment there to see. Obviously, this is your, you've asked me to draft something, I did, and of course, from this point forward, this is your baby to do with what you wish, and I have no pride in ownership or authorship, and so if you want to change it, that's perfectly fine.
I think what we'll do is try to get a consensus on these tonight, since we don't have all the members here, and then ultimately, when all the members are here, we'll come back and revisit it and approve that by the section. Anybody have any concerns about the proposal?
No, do we have to accept the correspondence?
Not from the city attorney.
No, from everybody else. Okay.
I have a question, which is the phrase that's missing that I would like to see, unless you talked about it last time when I wasn't here and said it wasn't important, is the final few words in the original proposal, which are aspects of life, in all aspects of life. I don't know if you could, economic, cultural, intellectual, all aspects of life, comma, including economic, cultural, I don't know. Maybe not, and maybe it's not important, but
So why are you suggesting that?
because I think there's other parts to life in Iowa City than economic, cultural, and intellectual. There's recreational, there's,
Oh, your question relates more to perhaps why Ms. Denning proposed what she did in the first place. The original proposal, I mean, I retained it.
okay, oh, all right.
And I'm sorry, if it's not clear from my memo, the first version in red is the original proposed change that's made by Commissioner Denning. And then the second underlined and in red font is as I've modified it. So the part about economic, cultural, and intellectual life, I carried over from Commissioner Denning's proposal, which I think she indicated she found in the model charter.
Right.
Are there other aspects of life? Certainly.
Was there a reason you didn't put in all aspects of life?
I'm sorry, for the last part?
Yeah.
Well, it was not the part about in all aspects of life that I was worried about, as much as I was about to have an equal opportunity to participate in all aspects of life. Again, using an easy example, if you're 20, you don't get to
Right.
enjoy the bar scene like everyone else does.
Yeah, but when I think, when she was asking, what I guess, is to still, to keep in all aspects of life.
So how would that read? Instead to say each individual shall have the opportunity to participate in all aspects of life, period, as opposed to listing economic, cultural, and intellectual?
What do you, one way?
I think that would be better than what's here. It's less limiting. I mean, to me, there
Yeah.
are other aspects of life.
Yeah.
Then it's not just about money, or, you know, we have a good intellectual life in this city for sure, and a good cultural life, but,
Yeah.
I mean, there's other parts of life. I don't know. Like I say, it's not a hill I die on.
Right. Well,
It's-
I guess I'll say, I'm agnostic about whether we list, economic, cultural, intellectual life, or just say in all aspects of life. The part that I was more worried about was the equal opportunity
That's
part.
what I understand,
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
have no problem modifying that.
Yeah.
I mean, and we could leave it, I mean, I would accept your revised proposal with the understanding that if we can think of a way to add that in that makes sense, we could talk about it again.
Yeah, could it potentially say each individual shall have the opportunity to participate in economic, cultural, intellectual life of the city and to have an equal opportunity to participate in all aspects of life?
But we're trying to get rid of equal opportunity.
Right.
Okay. Maybe we say to have the ability to participate in all aspects of life, if you're wanting to keep that in there.
I'm fine moving on.
I like her,
Well,
I
you're-
like your suggestion to just limit, just to go, to participate in all aspects of life and then cut it off.
Instead of listing economic, cultural, and intellectual, that is to just say something like each individual shall have the opportunity to participate in all aspects of
What's
life,
that?
or all aspects of life in the city, or something like that. Is that what you mean?
In all aspects of,
I would like to leave your language in, personally.
okay.
I don't know what the rest of the commission feels, but that, and Susan, you're not that
Right.
firm on it.
And we're not writing
I'm-
anything in
no,
stone
and
yet,
it-
so.
nothing's in
and so
stone.
so
It's-
I'm fine to move on.
Okay,
But
Yes.
all right.
Well,
I just brought that up as something that caught my eye.
The only thing about moving on, I should kind of zoom out a bit and mention that Kelly and I have had a conversation about how to kind of keep track, given how we're doing this, that it's kind of on a consensus basis, that we're
Right.
having these discussions about what language we want to have. But of course, at the end, you're going to need to have a whole document that you're going to need to vote on that then goes to city council and all that. So what we settled on is that we want to maintain kind of a document of your proposed, I'll say consensus document moving forward, so that frankly, we can, well, maybe mostly me, can keep track of.
Okay, well, my proposal then would be each individual shall have the opportunity to participate in the life of the city, including economic, cultural, and intellectual.
I like that.
You want to add in all aspects, is that what you're saying? Or you just said in the life of the city, you did?
In all no, because I think that that's in the life of the city.
Say the last part
in-
again, including the economic, cultural, and help me the last part?
I just said including economic, cultural, and intellectual. I
Okay.
didn't repeat life, but,
I think we do want to be careful about what we're promising or pledging. I mean, not all people can participate in all aspects for financial or physical or other reasons. So I'm always coming at this from the, are we creating an issue here, or is there
Yeah.
risk? This is generally okay. I'm generally okay with it, but we just need to be mindful that we're not pledging or promising something
Right.
that just isn't
Right.
realistic for all people. We're not all similarly situated. And
Yeah.
so, and the original intent of this preamble is what? It's participation, resident
Right.
participation on an inclusive basis and democratic self-government. So it's really about government, self-government, that this stems from.
Yeah. I mean, I would have strong feelings in making sure we don't have, you know, an equal opportunity to participate
Correct.
for all the
And I
reasons
don't,
that.
I,
The
and
bus
I'm
driver
fine
question.
with not
Yeah.
having that.
But as long as we all kind of understand the opportunity is more vague in the sense that it doesn't mean that every single person will have every single opportunity or,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying? So there is that. Would someone come forth and say, you have deprived me of the charter-imposed right to have an opportunity to participate in the next charter review commission because of fill in the blank? I don't know. They can make that argument. I don't know if it would hold.
Did you do anything with the proposed changes to the original language, resident participation, et cetera? On an equitable and inclusive basis as part of the process?
I'm
There
sorry.
were several words suggested to, as insertions within the original preamble, paragraph 1. I'm not sure
I
if you're
didn't-
intending to pick that up or just leave the charter as is.
If you're talking about preamble section 2, the provision of service relating to the health, safety, and welfare of its.
No, I'm still on 1. And I'm just looking at Commissioner Denning's proposal from 1 or 2 meetings ago, where she first proposed sub A and sub B.
Right. Oh, I see. All right. She had said resident participation on an equitable and inclusive basis as part of the process of democratic self-government, period, more specifically, and then A and B.
I mean, I think we need to decide on that, if that's a proposal that one of our commissioners has made.
I think that's right. Insofar as working forward with a consensus so that, again, Kelly and I can keep track of, you know, what you folks have, at least tentatively, understanding that you may come back repeatedly throughout this process and tweak it further. That's fine, but we just want to make sure that we keep track of the latest and greatest version so that we don't have all kinds of version control. In answer to your question, did I do anything to change the equitable and well, inclusive was already there, but as part of the process of language, I did not.
Okay.
And she took that right from the example.
Yeah.
You mean the model cities?
The model
Yeah,
charter.
the model.
So, just so I understand that also, is 1A then to be in lieu of 1 in the original, is that right?
Well, they're both going to be 1A, if that's
They're
what
both
you're
gonna be
asking.
1A.
We'll get down to 1B in a moment, but
Okay.
what I'm hearing, and admittedly, I'm not sure I've heard of the consensus of a majority of the commission, but what I'm hearing so far is that we would have the changes that Commissioner Denning made, resident participation on an equitable and inclusive basis as part of the process of democratic self-government, period. More specifically, new 1A as modified today, each individual shall have the opportunity to participate in the life of the city, comma, including economic, cultural, and intellectual, period.
That sounds good language.
I'm sorry?
I like that language.
Okay.
I
Are there
might
four?
change it to an opportunity as opposed to the opportunity.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, I think it matters. I think
yeah.
Yeah, it may
Yeah.
matter.
the nuances
Right,
are.
yeah,
They do.
yeah, I like that.
Okay.
All right, do we have a consensus of?
I think we do.
I think we do,
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm on with the and.
Okay. You're on with the and? Okay. Yeah. Okay. Are we ready to talk about 1B?
Yeah.
All right, other page. So again, I think Commissioner Denning had taken language from the model charter, which included a listing of various protected classes. Unfortunately, those protected classes do not track the protected classes that are present in Iowa law and Iowa City Code. And furthermore, it seemed to me to be dangerously duplicative. That is, we don't want to, you know, we've got a long city code. We don't want to have every part of it in the charter as well. Obviously, this is more broad. I'm not saying that this is anywhere near the kind of, you know, minutia that would be present in our zoning code, for example. But it is subject to change. That is, those protected classes have over time changed, and we do not protect things like military status, for example, that was listed here. So what I did is, I think, consistent with what we discussed at our last meeting, changed it to just track what we do protect, and that's listed in Title II of this code, that is the city code, not Article 2 of the charter, but Title II of city code. That's where we list those protected classes. So if they change there, then they'll change here
Yeah, it would seem that
automatically.
would be more flexible, faster.
Yeah.
Yep.
Is that
You
agreeable?
said something, you said city code, and this just says this code.
This code, yes, right. This is the charter for the city, and
Yeah.
it makes reference to this city code. So when I
Okay.
refer to this code, I'm talking about city code, as opposed to state code, for example.
I just,
Yeah,
Okay,
Yeah, I think that makes
yeah,
sense.
that makes sense.
yes,
okay.
All right,
We got a consensus on
I think we do on that one, okay?
yep.
Moving on to the qualified elector. You folks wanted me to look at that as kind of item 3 of 4 on my to-do list. As noted in the memo, it looked like the term qualified elector appeared 8 times in the charter and several times in the city code. And so while as I appreciate that there's been changes in the ease with which one can become a qualified elector, as that is someone who's registered to vote, as opposed to an eligible elector, someone who otherwise possesses all the qualities to be able to register to vote. I think it would be appropriate to leave the definition of qualified elector in the charter.
That was yours.
Okay,
I'd have to take a look back at that definition and see if we can maybe make a couple of tweaks to it, but I understand the huge ripple effect of it. My main
Yeah.
concern there was with the process of petitions where addresses were checked and signatures were struck because people had not updated their voter registration, which most young people don't do
Yeah.
immediately, so.
Yeah.
So I guess I'll take a look back and compare those definitions and
Sure.
see. I mean, they're pretty close, and it hasn't been much of a problem in recent years.
Yeah.
Historically, it
I mean,
was.
essentially, an eligible elector is someone who can register to vote.
Yeah.
Qualified elector is someone who did register
Right.
to vote.
Yeah, but historically, is registered to vote at current address.
Well, that may be historically. The
Yeah.
current definition is eligible elector means a person eligible to register to vote in Iowa City.
Okay,
Period.
all right.
You can still change your address on election day.
Yeah, that's actually one of the things that's changed since the early days of the charter, and you can register on election day.
Right.
Yeah,
okay, everybody comfortable with that?
all right, yeah.
Thank you.
All right, then that takes us to item 4, review section 1.04, proposed by Commissioner Denning to reconcile it with Iowa Code, Chapter 28E, and to explore whether the city contracts or otherwise partners with individual states other than Iowa. So as I mentioned in the memo, there are already present in federal code under Iowa law, under home rule, and Iowa law under Chapter 28E, which just gives the ability for various governmental entities, and in some cases, governmental entities and private entities, to together accomplish what they are otherwise duty-bound or eligible to perform. The Joint Emergency Communications Center is a good example of a 28E agreement. Long and short is I'm proposing that we don't have language like that because I'm a little worried that it would be viewed as an exhaustive list. whereas we would certainly never want to limit the ability of city government to engage in these kind of collaborative contracts if they would not otherwise be limited in that way. Just in checking around to see whether we did any contracting with other states other than through cooperative purchasing agreements, which I won't get real deep into, I won't get into the weeds at all. But I mean, that's the only kind of example I could find of kind of interstate or us contracting with other states, I would say.
Makes perfect sense to me.
I'm fine leaving it out.
Everybody agree? Consensus on that?
Yes.
No, yeah, right, we're already covered.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
And the beauty of this, I think the simpler we can emerge, the more understandable this document is going to be to the
Yeah.
public.
I mean, frankly, less is more in a lot of ways.
I
with the
would
chart.
agree. That's- Okay. Item number 4 on the agenda, review of city charter Article 2. And I would suggest for this evening's discussion that we confine it to the council itself, leave the mayor discussion for the next meeting. Give us an opportunity to have a pretty robust discussion tonight, because we have definitely some items on that have been presented. Thanks, Mr. Deeth and Ms. Denning, for providing their thoughts. And I will say that while I absolutely will respect everybody's opinion, I might not necessarily agree with it, and that's why we're here.
Fair enough, John.
But I want everybody to know that, because it's well worth our discussion to have this, because this is the 50-year anniversary, so it may be time to possibly consider some changes.
So our discussion is going to focus on districts primarily tonight?
Basically, that's
Okay,
it.
Great.
So, John, you've given us some thoughts here,
Yeah.
and
I think everybody expected to hear this the minute I got appointed to the commission. This is my third effort to get onto the commission, and this historically has been my greatest concern about Iowa city government. I very, very strongly feel that if it is going to be a representative body of this city, if there's 7 people sitting at that table, 2 of them should be undergrad students. And we have a abysmal track record of electing young people to office in Iowa City. Countless student candidates, overwhelmingly defeated over the years, and the electoral patterns are such that it's simple to explain. The permanent community will not vote for student candidates. And I think the only way to work around that is to have much smaller districts where only smaller areas of town are voting on these candidates. I grew up in Wisconsin. The city council model there was very different. You had precinct-sized wards, so a town the size of La Crosse, where I grew up, Eau Claire, where I went to college, you had about a 25-member council, and each one was elected from a very small ward, and we had a couple of wards that were nothing but student housing, and there were inevitably 2, 3, 4 students sitting at the big table. La Crosse always treated them very respectfully and as full members. Eau Claire refused to second their motions, but they were at the table. And I'm not sure what the limitations are within Iowa law to allow for a larger body. But if you had, say, a 9-member body with people being elected from 3 precinct wards, you'd probably get 1 or 2 young people sitting at the big table. And that's just the big picture. I know that would be an extremely radical change, but just putting it out on the table for people to take a whack at.
How many members were on the council up there? 20?
It would be
25?
a couple dozen, yeah. And I think
It's a sitting city council or?
yeah.
okay.
And the county board was similar as well, with maybe slightly bigger wards.
I think it would be very difficult, personally, and unwieldy. That's that's my opinion on it. Having served on
Yeah, I
a
knew
having served on a 7-person council that really does function very well, in my humble opinion.
Yeah.
And so,
And-
I like the number 7 that we have. It's whether we decrease the at-large and go to more districts, that's a question.
Yeah. And I'm open to other ideas. I just thought I'd throw that one out there. And I lost my train of thought there, I'm sorry. But basically, the pattern is that the students can't get votes outside the student neighborhoods. So that the barrier of having to win citywide in order to sit on the council is just insurmountable.
Yeah. So, having only the people from the district,
Yeah.
can you,
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah.
I have, the question I have, can you create student districts if you have 4 districts?
Well, you can't really, I've worked on the districting for the last 3 cycles in Iowa City within the current charter, and you can't really draw a district to predict an outcome.
Yes.
I think if we were divided into 4 districts, there still would not, I think you'd have to get down to maybe 7 districts before you'd have a midtown district that could be student controlled. And again, you would have to draw those districts based on census population.
Yeah.
And so you couldn't draw them for a specific outcome, so.
No, you can never know.
Right.
There-
There's a lot of court fighting about that right now, so.
Yeah.
There is currently a Iowa student liaison to council,
Yeah.
correct?
Yep.
So they inform and comment on decisions, but they don't vote?
They don't vote.
Would the idea be that they would be a full voting member of council?
Yeah. Voting members are where the action is.
Now, Ames has ex officio
Right.
members, correct?
I
Okay.
think so.
Yeah.
I read an interesting article on the first elections in Iowa's college towns after the 26th Amendment, and the 3 major towns had 3 different outcomes. Ames more or less suppressed the student vote. Our student vote split in the primary, and Cedar Falls elected a student mayor. So,
I think the vote should lie, in my opinion, I feel like we should allow that to be voted by the city, and I can understand that the youth feel like their voices needs to be heard, but they should campaign for that, in my opinion. I think trying to elect a student position could become difficult
Yeah.
over the years, as we're asking them to vote on citywide policies that would affect everyone, and maybe things, there's a bug over here all of a sudden, that affect, long-term for us.
Yeah.
I feel like their voice is heard, and then I would wonder about, what is the definition of a student? Because we have lots of students in this town, not just University of Iowa, we have Kirkwood, we have online students, we have University of Iowa,
Yeah.
so when we're thinking about making these changes, the ripple effect could,
Yeah.
I think that we should encourage them to be more involved in city council by running for a position that would become open, and that would be a great way to be a change agent for our city if they wanted to be more involved.
And
That's just my opinion.
If you look back on the enrollment status of everyone who served on council, I realize there's been some people who have been enrolled. I know that Michelle Payne was, but I'm thinking specifically of the young downtown rental housing and dorm community. That's the group that has been unrepresented for a very, very long time.
I think back to my own time as an undergrad, which was back in the dark ages.
Mine too.
And
You weren't carrying your computer to class, were you?
Was the state capital here, it was, because it came from Burlington, and we were
geez.
terrified.
yeah, there you go.
That's okay.
But
I'm dead.
my personal view at that time, I had very little interest in local government, even though my grandfather served on the city council at that time. And I think I was more attuned to national politics. And I think it would be my position that many young people at that point in their lives, their focus is getting an education and enjoying their college life. And then once they leave that arena, then they have the opportunity to partake of, especially if they stay here. But I just don't feel that there'd be the focus, in my own humble opinion.
Well, I am not interested in going beyond 7 as for number of council members, and I think carving out a seat for a particular group
Yeah.
is abhorrent to me. So
Yeah.
I'm not in favor.
Yeah.
Jennifer, what are your thoughts on it?
I definitely would want to have sorry, sometimes I lose my track. So I definitely would have I definitely want to have people elected from the district, that the council person be elected to the district. As I don't think 9 is that much wieldier than 7.
I think 7 is actually, you promote participation in government when there's a reasonable number of people to talk to about your issue. And I think when you say, there's only, when I've encouraged people who complain about something, I say, talk to the council people. They are listening to you. And there's only 7 of them, and it's not hard to, some of them have office hours. I think as you expand, it's sort of counterintuitive, but to me, 7 is a very good number for when you're trying to have conversations with people and sway them. It's a more manageable number than 9
Or 27.
or 27.
Yeah, 27
I
is
understand
not-
27 is not going to happen. I guess just one more thing I'd say is just that the argument gets made that the students are only here for a little while, and we all understand that. But the student community is permanent and is really the lifeblood of Iowa City. And I think as we go forward through the rest of this service on the commission, we need to keep that in mind, so.
Yeah, and they have their own city government, or, sorry, not city, student government as well, which I think is wonderful, and it's a way for them to then take it to their liaison that's currently a non-voting member. And I think it's, they are making decisions that affect the area that they control within the city, and I think that's great, and it teaches them about government and how to interact with the community.
I think, I agree, Susan. I think 7 is a good number. You expand the logistics, you expand the cost to the public. These are compensated positions. There are a lot of considerations about size, but in my experience, 7 was workable. As to the students, totally get your point, John. I guess I would say that, I guess I would disagree that they aren't represented. I would say that, the students have the same right of representation as anyone else if they're living within our city limits. I think the problem is a lack of engagement, a lack of interest on the part of some, and that, you do see episodes of heightened participation, the bar votes.
We both remember
We
that.
both remember that. And they, that was a very motivating, activating chapter for the students who were here at the time. And if there's if we're trying to promote more engagement, the student government and the student liaison have worked really well with us over the years, and maybe there's more that can be done on an educational level. And I guess my last thing is, if we're trying to augment the participation in this, at that dais, of one prominent group or sizable group in the city, I can think of others as well that don't get represented. And so where do you draw the line? That would be my concern.
All right. Well, I hear basically no consensus for my idea, but I do thank everybody for hearing me out.
Well, I thank you for bringing it up.
I'm glad that you spent the time arguing for it, because then the information's out there, and, you know, people who agree with you can tell us that they do. So,
The only other thing I would say, rather than going to all seven council members, what's more comfortable is going to one that you are connected with. Having the 9 where you are directly connected with that council person, especially if you know them well, makes it a lot easier. Because I have no problem going to Sean, and I could keep Andrew, because I know them well.
Sure.
And that's what I think happens more than everybody going to all the council members. If you have an issue, then you go to that person. And having someone that they can connect with, so someone that is in their area, that they choose, will make it a lot easier to connect.
I have to give Andrew a hard time, though, because his existence kind of undercut my case, so.
Kind of did.
Let's talk about the districts, and that aspect is the proposal to have the district candidates elected only by the district residents. It's done now on the primary, if there's 3 candidates for 2, obviously, then the district voters only vote on those, the district voters in that district vote in the primary. Then in the general election,
If there's a primary.
if there's a
If there's a
primary, yeah.
Yeah.
And then in the general election, everybody votes on all the candidates. I know when I first ran in 1975, which was the first year of the 7-person council, there was a lot of question I did a lot of educating of people at that time, because they were curious as to why we had district candidates who were represented district but were elected at large. And I said it was a compromise, because that was a compromise. We went from a 5-person at-large council to a 7-person where we had 4 at-large and 3 districts. That was a compromise for those who wanted to stay at-large and those who wanted district. And I think to get that geographic balance was important. And at the time, I still felt that, and I still do, feel that everybody in the community needs to be weighing in on individuals running who are going to be making major decisions for the community. Now, if you'll notice, in the last few election cycles, we've had many races go uncontested. So the argument that's being made that we would get more buy-in with more participation if it was just done on a let's say the districts would just be voted on by the district voters, I think it's a question in my mind. But I think our goal, or the community's goal, needs to be to increase people's awareness, because we're really going lacking of getting people to seek office. I don't think it's healthy when a lot of these seats are going unopposed. And that's what we've had in the last few election cycles, and mainly in the district
There's been a
races.
definite trend away from full fields of candidates. If you could see the chart that John turned in, that somebody at the auditor's office made. We've gone through a stretch several times when only 3 people were running for the 2 at-large seats. Some uncontested people in the district seats. Really starting in 2013 was when that number of candidates dropped off.
I think having a smaller area that you have to get people convinced would make it make the election campaigning to be a lot less than going citywide. Because if you have a district campaign, you can easily contact the people, each one of the voters directly. Citywide, that's a lot harder. And so having people in a district vote makes, when you make it easier, I think more people will want to run. And then what happens when you have a concentrated minority, and I'm not talking just racial,
Right.
but view-wise, they can easily get overridden by the rest of the people. I'm thinking definitely of students. They can easily get. And if there was somebody that they feel closer to, they would contact them more. And that's the main reason I like district, is it's cheaper to run, and you have more connection with that person.
Go ahead.
I would say, while I understand all of that, I would have some concerns about parochialism, and I know that that was sort of addressed in the summary, but if I'm answerable only to the voters of my portion of town, and there are things before city council that, many of them impact the entirety of the city, how would that impact my decisions if perhaps there would be not as positive or a net effect for my own district, but greater for the whole city? For people to balance that, I think could be a challenge if they're only representing one small portion of town.
We've had that question come up with the county as well, as districts have been discussed, and the question comes in, okay, if my district is entirely Midtown Iowa City, why am I going to vote for the road at Swisher? I think it's good that there's a mix of the at-large and the district seats. The question as to whether those district seats should be elected by the district or be elected by the full city. That's the big issue of discussion here. The question I've got, going back a ways, and maybe I should be smarter about this because I was involved in the last drawing of the last three districts. But what was the origin? Basically, the layout has been the same since the beginning. There's been a downtown and north District C. There's been a west side to the south side District A, and then the east side District B. How did that kind of start?
That's a very good question, John. I'm sure it has to do with the population has to be somewhat equal.
Right, yeah, I think we had to be within 1%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I really couldn't tell you. I don't know who draws that map. I mean, is it done like the state of Iowa does
No,
there?
The way it's been done the last few cycles is that the city has worked with the auditor's office on the precincts and the districts, and I've been one of the people who worked on that, so. That's how it, and then the council approves or asks us to go back and work on it again. It's not done as blind as the Legislative Service Bureau is.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
And the auditor's interest in drawing precinct lines is generally more where are the suitable polling places, and then it's a matter of putting the right set of precincts together to get a relatively equal population balance.
Okay.
Well, so you may be able to answer your own
I
question.
may be able to answer my own question, but not as far back as when the districts were first
Yeah, so-
established. I only go back to the 2001 map. so.
I always blank on what district applies to what
You're in?
street. Yeah, I mean, seriously.
I always have, I go, am I going to vote for that person?
And so this
or that
afternoon, I printed the current map, thank you, Auditor's Office. And it does show, it's color-coded, it shows populations within, a few hundred or whatever of each
Yeah.
other. So that makes sense. I know I was on the council for 8 years, and I know I voted at once, I believe, on new districts, I assume following the 2010 census.
Yeah, it would have been in 2011.
So, but I don't know how they've morphed exactly, whether it's crossed a street or turned the corner, and how it compares to the 70s. I have no idea.
The first set of districts I remember would have been the 90s district. So they've basically, since at least that far back,
Yeah.
similar format
Yeah.
as far as the general area of town.
So I don't know.
Yeah.
Is my response, and that's a good question, how it compares.
I have a question for you, city attorney, then. Why, do you feel that the city should have representation to all, like, everybody, if we had like, you know, A, B, and C represented, the whole city would each be listed into one of the districts? And is there a reason why some people were excluded or is it just because of growth that they didn't get assigned to a district?
Oh, everyone who lives within the city falls into one of the districts.
Well, when you look at the map, it appears that there's people that are not color-coded into, or is it just because it's new?
I'm not sure which map you're referring to, I'm sorry.
Maybe they're not, maybe that's not. in the
Mine's
city.
effective January 15th, 2022. It's on the auditor's
That's the
website.
current one.
But are the ones that aren't color-coded, are those outside the city limits?
It could be University Heights, which we have
Yeah.
yet to
It's University
forcibly
Heights right
annex
here.
and take over
Yeah,
stormtroopers.
a bunch of, yeah.
That would be an
Yeah,
involuntary
University Heights is not in a
annexation.
council district.
I mean, it's certainly the
That makes
case
sense.
that we have annexations in between,
Forget that.
but then we need to incorporate them into one of the districts.
Yeah, and
I just
then,
saw white on there, that's why I was.
Yeah,
Yeah, right in the middle, and you're like, what, yeah.
yeah, those
Talk about
annexations are
singling
then
people
just
out.
appended to the
You don't get a
neighboring
district.
precinct.
That's a really good
We've got
Yeah,
those
and
couple of
so-
oddities on the edges of town.
Right,
Yes, which
yes.
drives me
Commissioner Dees would point out, these are all built out of blocks too, and census tracts in state congressional districts that all, it's tricky.
Sure.
Tell me about it.
Well, and as you describe them, it seems like you have certainly have a district that is student-heavy when you're talking about the one that includes downtown
Town.
and the dorms and the north side.
And the north side, District C.
I mean, that's
Yeah, C would have the largest.
student-heavy
Yeah.
And that's
population-wise. I'd be interested to know whether the people in that district vote at the same level in city elections as the people in the other.
Generally not.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a good point.
Yeah.
I would guess they
Yeah.
don't.
Yeah,
Conceivably, they
historically,
could.
District B, which is the east side district, has had the higher turnout than the other two. Because
Right.
A and C include some low turnout areas.
Sure.
But I think maybe they would be more interested in becoming involved more if they had a stronger connection with the candidates and the person, and electing people on a smaller area allows for that.
We just aren't getting people to run though, Jennifer, that's the issue. I understand where you're coming from, I really do, and I'd be more inclined to consider that, but if we were getting 3 candidates, let's say, in each district, now we're getting 1. We're lucky, and we're lucky to get 2. That's,
Maybe one of the reasons why
you think it's
more
because
people
it,
is because of the cost of
I see.
doing a
Okay.
citywide
okay, understand,
campaign.
okay,
If you have a smaller area.
sure.
And the other nice thing is it makes it easier to identify who might be interested and to encourage them to run.
Okay.
Because most people, especially students, are like, oh, I've never thought of doing that. But if somebody comes to them and says, this is how you can run and this is how you can do a campaign at a reasonable amount, I think more people would actually run. I think the citywide voting is one of the reasons why you might not have as many candidates.
I understand the concern about district parochialism, but I think If you're looking at a third or a fourth of the city, that's a pretty good-sized piece of the city. If we have a 3-4 or a 4-3 split on the districts versus the at-large.
And we've really never
Plus,
had
it's
that.
one vote.
Pardon me?
If it's something that really favors one area and not the rest of the city, the other council members are not going to vote for that. So even if you're so focused on that, it's still one vote. So they won't be able to overcome the fact that it's bad for the rest of the city.
I guess I would say, though, that you'd be more likely to give a project in a specific area of town due consideration if you were on the council and you lived across town, if you had to answer to those voters in that district. And I see what you're saying about trying to push participation on the election side, and that's a big challenge. I think if you do that, though, you're going to pay a price in terms of representation after a counselor gets onto the council. And I say this because right now, even though we have people who are at-large or represent one of the 3 districts, everybody has the same incentive to return a phone call if somebody calls them and wants to talk, no matter where they live in the city. And if you have a pure district system, and I represent a pure District A, let's say, I have less of a reason to respond to somebody who's not in my district who wants to talk about a city issue. And you know, the vast majority of what the council votes on is citywide. You know, the bus system, the library, our tax levy, all sorts of the budget. And so I've always kind of liked the fact that every single counselor has to respond to every corner of the city.
They don't necessarily, I have a cynical view when it comes to people politicians returning phone calls quickly and answering to it. Okay. Is usually donor class, and then the volunteers, and then the people. But the city is small enough that I think the district person would still respond to somebody else. And then if it's a district, then I personally would feel more comfortable going to a council person that represented me and my interests rather than, how many people contact the whole city council as opposed to one person?
Well, you generally contact the person that you know. That is what happens a lot of times. And like Matt said, you know, the council is representing basically the whole city. And I've never found parochialism myself in the time that I served or watching, because I think the council is focused on the greater good. And we're not that large of a metro area that I think we're a larger city, but we're still have that small town feel,
Yes.
in my humble opinion. So,
One thing I'll say is the difference in the electoral system between the district primary and the November election is probably the single most confusing thing for me to try to explain to voters. And then we went through that in particular this last fall where we had a primary only for one district, and you know, a lot of people were unhappy. I don't get to vote today. How come? You know, I'm seeing signs everywhere. So I don't know whether that's a matter of system change or whether that's a matter of voter education, but it is very, very confusing to people.
I think voter education would be very important in this regard.
This is a topic that I'm really torn on. On one hand, I think it benefits the city as a whole to have all the city council people responsible for the city as a whole. And that's a huge thing to me. The two reasons why I call that into question are, A, everybody thinks we're crazy. I explain this to people who are voting all the time. Well, that is the stupidest thing I ever heard of. Why do they do it that way? Blah, blah. I mean, it's like, it's very confusing to people. And I like to make government simple, and this is not simple. And the second reason is the issue of the difference in spending potentially between running a district campaign and running a citywide campaign. But I think I come down, I think what's best for the city is that all the city council people represent the whole city.
You know, on the spending thing, we've got a built-in safety valve in that we've got a cap on what you can donate, and we don't permit corporate donations. So what's raised for city council races around here is really quite small relative, compared to other cities.
That's true.
I mean, I was talking to a Democratic consultant in Des Moines the other day, and she raised $300,000 or $400,000 for a city council race in Des Moines. Those are really big numbers. Then you do have a donor class,
Yes.
you
Yeah.
know? So I think we're protected against that. We don't allow any corporate donations for Iowa City. And that's a unique rule. And I, in my experience, it made the richest person in Iowa City could only give $100. And I think that makes, I think that's healthy for our community personally.
Yes.
I don't know if it's
Yes.
illegal, but I think it's healthy.
It is.
Yeah, we do occasionally get into the issue. We had one candidate a couple cycles ago who spent pretty heavily from their own pockets, and that's, I don't know how much there is to do about that constitutionally, because that's a nationwide problem.
Yeah. You know, the other thing is, we talk about confusion. I look at just 2023. In 2023, both Laura Burgess and Andrew Dunn, I think, went from at-large to
Right.
running
Yes.
in districts,
Correct.
which, for political reasons, and that's perfectly fine. But if people are going to switch around. And if I had voted for one of those individuals or against one of those individuals at large, and then all of a sudden they're squeezing themselves into a district spot, I may not even realize that. And I'm watching TV thinking that's my counselor, not knowing that they're no longer responsible to me because I'm not in their district. There's confusion there.
Oh, yeah. Molly, what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm with Susan too, you know, where I
Okay.
feel like, I think it'd be great to have representation from districts for sure. However, we want the council people to be voting for the city, period, anyway.
Right.
So
Okay.
you may be leaning towards your district in your voting, but ultimately you're voting for the city, not your district.
All right, good.
And as we talked about, you're gonna go to someone that you're comfortable talking to, right? And that may not always be, as we say, Matt, it might not be, you know, Counselor X, it might be Counselor Y that's not even in your district, you know? So I'm with
But
you, Susan, I'm kind of like, I think I worry about people living in different parts of the city and being at large for everybody, but then I look at it as you're saying too, we really want people to always vote for the city, and that's what they should be doing, so.
My inclination is toward having the district members elected by district because of that issue of certain classes of people, and yet, I'm talking about the students, not being able to get over the hump with the rest of town. I mean, the Andrew's the closest to a student member we've had in a long time. Granted, he was unopposed. He was elected out of District C, which has got the largest concentration of the downtown population. And I'd like to see that be the first of many, so.
Okay.
I just think the council people you have to put in the work when you're running.
Yeah.
You know, so it doesn't matter if
Right.
you're a student or you're whatever age you are, you have to put in the work. And that's,
point.
that's what it comes down to, is putting in the work. Because if you're a student and you really want it, you're gonna be out there door knocking, and you're gonna be out there promoting yourself and utilizing the people you know, so.
Good point.
I think
Andrew is a
it-
hell of a door knocker.
Yeah, but to overcome that prejudice from the rest of the community towards students, that, one, you don't plan on being here for that long, even though there is still a transitive community even without the students. So somebody who's renting an apartment here could easily just move to Coralville and be out. So there is a lot of prejudice against the students, so overcoming that can be very difficult. And like I keep saying, the great thing about having a smaller campaign number of people is the greater the opportunity towards really getting to know that person. And underneath it all, most, even if you're elected from a district, I think most of the council members would also want the city to go well. Because if the city doesn't go well, their district is not going to go well too. And so having that personal connection, I think, could make a big difference.
Okay, Mackenzie? What are your thoughts?
I would say I understand, as been well summarized by people, why we're considering this and think it's important that we do so. I do understand, I think as illustrated by this fall's primary, that there can be some confusion to explain the process. However, I'm not sure that that issue alone for me, given the size of the community, overwhelms the fact that I do like that people are answerable to the entire city. I also think currently participation in the electoral life, I'm not sure in the conversations, at least I've had generally with young professionals perhaps, about why or they would or would not seek public office. It's, and again, the circles that I've talked to, it's not so much about running a campaign or resources, it's the general sort of culture and sort of fear of retaliation or things getting nasty, or frankly, just feeling they don't have time. And so I'm not sure that lowering the barrier for cost or the size of a campaign is going to have the increased participation, at least when, and based on some of the casual conversations I've had with people about why they would or wouldn't run for office. To that effect, I would be right now leaning towards leaving the system as is, understanding that there certainly probably is room for voter education about this unique structure, the compromise that Iowa City struck.
I think we have two commissioners not here. We obviously will revisit this issue at a later date to finalize our opinions on it. It's been a healthy discussion. I think we've gotten some things out that need to be said. I appreciate everybody's input, and we will circle back to this also at a later date.
Yeah, I didn't
Yes,
think
we
you were going
will.
to get this one nailed down on the first try.
No, I had no idea that it would either, so. Okay, we've reviewed that area, and we will save the mayor issue for our next meeting, which is Thursday, May 23rd. I'd like to move to item 5 on the agenda. My request would be all those dates except June 11th are June 11th is not favorable to me, and I've talked to City Clerk Kelly Grace about that. And what date did we look at, Kelly, if it would work with everybody else?
It was Monday, June 17th.
Monday,
that this
June
room
7th.
was available.
So would that work for everybody, if that would be agreeable?
Can't see why not.
I
Yeah.
could do Monday, yes, I could.
Okay,
Yeah, that'll work
great.
for me.
Okay.
So knock out the 11th and replace with the,
Pardon me?
John said it won't work for him.
I said it would.
Oh,
I'm
would,
sorry.
okay.
Sorry, I mumbled.
It works for me.
I appreciate that. Yeah,
I
we're,
thought you were going to say the 10th, and that would not work for me, but the 17th does.
Monday,
Right.
June 17th?
yeah, we're
Also
going out
works
of, I'm going to Kansas City to see my beloved Yankees play the Royals.
I'll be in DC and
that
then going to the
excuse?
congressional baseball game, so,
I'm going to be in Michigan that week, but I'll just send someone else from my office to staff.
Okay.
That'll be fine.
okay.
All right. We appreciate your being with us.
No
both of
baseball
you.
Yes.
involved?
Sorry?
No baseball involved? We got baseball.
No baseball. Hopefully, there will be some beach
I
volleyball.
should be recovered from the primary election by then.
By then.
and, sorry, July 9 is bad for me. I'm out of
Is there
state.
is there another date in July that we could look at, Kelly? Or is that?
Could I bring that to the next meeting?
Yes, please do. Yeah. That's
Just wanted
great.
to get
No,
that
we
out
want to
there.
be flexible here with everybody, because we're getting to the point now, we really need to start honing in on some decisions too, so.
And we had discussed having a lighter summer. If we
Yes.
still want to do that, maybe we should discuss that at our next meeting.
Yes.
If people would like to have a lighter schedule
That's a
during the
good
summer.
point. That's a good point, Molly. So let's think about that also at our next meeting.
Unless Matt wants to be
No, I
more
was going to,
aggressively.
by that you mean like on the rooftop at Joe's place or the big roof? Sure, our city
You
clerk and
offered?
attorney
Oh,
would,
okay. Yeah.
could oblige. I agree with you though, Molly, that probably makes sense realistically.
Before we get to community comment, I wanted just to make one other statement or suggestion. We are a product of the city council who chose us, but I want to emphasize again that we are independent. We're to make these decisions on our own, and I don't think I would suggest not conversing with the council until such time as we have a final product. I know we had some input from Councilmember Dunn, and I appreciate where he's coming from, but by the same token, we really, I don't think we should be necessarily carrying their water at this point, but that we are making our own decisions. So,
Yeah, just so long as it's clear that any council member, if they wish to send a letter, I mean, they're like any other member of the public,
Certainly.
can certainly communicate with you folks, but if you.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely, that's fine.
Yeah, when we get our suggestion together, maybe we could have some work groups with them to really get some input.
I think once we decide where we're going with
Yeah.
this, absolutely.
Yeah, after we get
Yeah,
our
absolutely.
draft done.
Community comment, item number 6. At this time, anybody wishes to address?
Thank you for coming.
Yes, thank you for being here. One other question I had, and I'd ask Kelly about this, about how we are communicating these meetings to the media. Obviously, I think it's important enough that the media at least share some interest in what we're doing. And I don't know, again, we don't have the media coverage that we used to have, and I wish I don't have a recommendation on that as to how we might see greater participation or have the media at least report on our meetings and our discussions, because I think it's fairly significant what we're doing here. We only do it once every 10
Hauling out of local media.
Oh, that's absolutely the case, too.
That is
Yeah.
exactly what's causing.
No, that's no doubt. I hate to refer back to but in 1976, when I was first on the council, we had media representatives. I was the press citizen at every informal and formal meeting, and they were reporting to the community what we were doing. It gave a great service to the community, every meeting.
In the 90s, we had typically 3 or 4 press at every Board of Supervisors meeting.
Same thing.
Yeah.
Now they only show up if there's a controversy, basically. So I don't know how we correct that. I just don't have a magic wand I can wave at this point, because I'm sure many people don't know about the work we're doing, and probably maybe don't care.
Is it possible for the city of Iowa City to put something on their website? We want to hear from you.
Excuse me.
Many
I
people
s-
maybe don't even know what a charter is, and, maybe there's a way to get the word out that way.
Right. Now, so the city has a communications department that we could work with if the interest of the commission is to kind of do more to get the word out there that this commission exists and that you're doing your good work. Beyond that, I'm not sure, well, it depends on what you mean about kind of creating a statement or an educational, I can't remember how you phrased it. I mean, we could probably put something very basic together to get out there. Obviously, we can't tell the press to pick it up or, or cover it, but.
First
At
Amendment.
least the people that get city notifications of
Right.
press releases will read it.
Presumably.
And presumably. I mean, I think it's a nice time in our process to put something brief out that says, the commission's been meeting, they're working their way through the charter, they've looked at a model charter, they encourage attendance at their meetings, and we have dates for the next 3 meetings, and say, the next 3 meetings are at this time, and,
I think there is, when I get the city bulletin, the weekly, and there is information about our commission. It has what we're going to be talking about in the packet that we get. So I appreciate having that out there.
Okay.
Yeah, probably. I mean, of course, you folks have your own webpage on the city, the city webpage has a section for the Charter Review Commission. Now, you got to go looking for it.
Yep.
Yes.
To be clear. But let me ask you this, in working with the communications department to get the word out, are you comfortable with us just doing something and throwing it out there, or is it something you folks would like to review at your next meeting before
No,
we?
I think just to get it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We want to hear from you. We'd like to have input.
that's right.
And then maybe as we, after we get our draft done, we talked about the last 10-year group. They actually had meetings at the library so the public could come, and they said that
good
was
idea.
well-attended.
It's a good idea.
So then, once we get there, then maybe we have some more of
Very
those
good idea.
meetings where we could be there and engage with the public with some
absolutely.
of the things we've discussed to get really good feedback.
Good idea.
Yeah, I feel like we're really on the front end here, and, I mean, we've only had several meetings, and I'm glad to have participation at any point in the process, but at some point, we'll have a quasi-product.
To react to.
And then an open house or a different venue or something like that would be helpful, I
Yeah,
think.
very good idea. Item number 7, adjournment. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Moved by Deeth, seconded by
Sure.
Molly. All those in favor,
Second.
signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Motion
And
opposed.
bye.